It's time to begin our class today. I want to welcome everyone who's here. Good to have Wayne visiting with us from Seymour. We know a big reason why he's here. She's sitting next to him, but always good to have friends from the past come and visit and be with us today. I want to ask Bill Morris, if we will, to word the prayer. Ask God's blessings upon our class time today, if you bow with us.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this day, the beautiful weather we had. We thank you for this opportunity to come together as a church family and to study your word and to learn from the word that you give us about the things that you have us to know. We thank you for Brother Bill and his ability to teach our class. We just ask that you be with each of us as we study, that we open our minds and our hearts and focus upon you for this time. Lord, we thank you for meeting us and all for your Son that gave his life on the cross. It's through his name we pray. Amen.
Does everyone have a copy as we get started? If you don't have the Beatitudes memorized yet by heart, then turn to the book of Matthew chapter 5. Look at it for a few seconds because it's our goal to learn them all. There are 8 of them, found in Matthew 5, verses 3 down through verse 12. Learn all 8. We are on number 6 today. We have 2 more. Give you a few more seconds. How many know them yet? Well, we'll look at them and read them together. Well, it's good to see Stephen Donahue coming in today. Boy, he has had a rough road to hoe for a while. All right, let's hear it. Blessed are the, what's the first one? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. The first 4 have to do with a man's relationship with God. The next 4, last 4, have to do with man's relationship with other people. We looked at the first one of those last week. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. So the second in that group, blessed are the pure in heart. I'm not going to take the time to read the summary that's found in points number 2 and 3, but I do want again to continue to emphasize the word that's translated blessed. It's from the Greek word makarios. It talks about a life that's not dependent upon the physical outward circumstances of life. We are a twofold being. We have a physical nature, but we also have a spiritual nature. We know we have to take care of the physical body. If it doesn't get food and water, it will let you know it quickly. You can find out pretty quickly through symptoms it's not working. The physical body is sick and so forth, but the spiritual doesn't cry out as loud. But considering eternity, which one has a greater value? Our soul compared to the worth of the world is what? One day all will know that. I mentioned before in sermons and Bible classes, when the first sermons ever got together, 5 minutes after I die, what will I know? And so when a person has died, we know immediately they're judged, the angels are commissioned to carry their soul to, what do we call that place of all the spirits, to the Hadean world. It has 2 parts. One part we call paradise. We also refer to it as Abraham's bosom. And the other, well, it's called torment. And so we're judged already. We still have an identity. We have a spiritual nature. We see in Luke chapter 16, which many people believe to be a parable, but parables don't have real names. They just refer to individuals. But we see characters mentioned there by name. Anybody know who some of those characters might be mentioned in Luke chapter 16 in that teaching? Lazarus, and also there was Abraham listed. So there was an identity there, a recognition of who that person was. But one was in torment and sought refuge for that, and none was available. He then got very evangelistic, wanted somebody to go back to the earth and to warn his 5 brothers. And anybody remember what he was told? Nope. They have the law and the prophets. In other words, the word available to the population on earth is all that they will get. Open it up and read and obey and avoid such a horrible place. Last week we looked at mercy. If you look at the first point, blessed are the poor in spirit, in total contrast to the outward, superficial, and hypocritical religion of the scribes and Pharisees. Jesus said that it's the inner man and the core of his very being that God requires purity. If you look at the Bible, Matthew chapter 6, God pointed out the prayer life of the Pharisees. What would they do? They would pray long prayers. For what motive? Be seen of men. They would give alms, but what was it to be? A show and so forth. And so the reward they get from other people saying that would be all there is. They'll get no reward from God. In fact, there's a statement made, Sermon on the Mount, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, that was a problem. That was a challenge because most people back then, prior to Jesus' coming, respected the scribes and Pharisees as someone who knew the law. But they were hypocrites. Their religion was outward. It was uncaring. They focused on the wrong things. And Jesus exposed that. Someone who only deals with the physical, can they ever be ultimately happy? They cannot. There's a nature about this world. No, if you get something and enjoy it over the course of time, it will decline in value. I use an example. Can anybody here ever go to a circus when you were young? Was it a big deal the first time? Any of you old enough to remember a show by the name of Sky King? There's a guy who flew around a plane. We lived in Dayton, Ohio as a child. We left there when I was 6, so I was either 4, 5, or 6. But he was the one who was there at the circus in Dayton. And I got a picture. Me and my two sisters had a cowboy hat on, which pretty much all my pictures had back then. But I remember that. It was the grandest thing I'd ever seen. And I've taken gone with my girls a lot of circuses since. You think it has the appeal now that it did? It does not. Yes. Yeah, it's when you're doing something for the 37th time, how appealing is it? Anybody ever go to watch a football game in Dayland Stadium? In November 1962, I saw my first game. I've been to probably 30 since. You know, I can take it or leave it. Now with TV, the views that you get from that, who wants to go sit in the crowd and all the screaming people and all the drunks around? But, you know, it's still something to see. But each time you do something, its value diminishes. That's the way drug works. Our body works that way. I was talking with Bill Morris the other day about, I know he went through times when he was going through his cancer. I don't know this Oxycontin, oxycodone, pretty strong stuff, 30 milligram. Anybody ever taken some of those strong pain pills? I mean, what would maybe 3 a day might be tough. I knew somebody who was addicted to them who was taking 15 a day. It would kill a horse, but his body, over the course of time, got used to it, demanded more and more, he said, just to feel normal. Well, he died of a meth overdose at the age of 27. That's sad. Nothing on this earth lasts in value, appreciation, and meaning. God designed it that way. And so it's a great thing, and the Apostle Paul probably summed it up best in Philippians chapter 4, the practical application of this word, when he said, I've learned to be content whatever state I am. I'm okay whether I have a lot or whether I have nothing. His list of necessities were 2 things. As long as I have food and clothing, I'm okay. Can you imagine how powerful that life would be? Where your identity is not based on what you own, but who you are. And so these are the attitudes that Jesus said, if you can possess, develop, maintain, and grow these attitudes, then great will be your faith and reliance. The spiritual nature will be developed in a great way. So blessed are the pure in heart. Last Sunday, I don't know how many remember much about the sermon, but we talked about an aspect of God's nature, one of his attributes called holiness. That's one that's kind of hard to kind of wrap our lives around, but the one that's probably a synonym close to that is purity. God is completely pure in his morals. He cannot lie, the scripture says in the book of Hebrews. He's not capable of lying, to be deceitful, to be dishonorable, to be unmerciful. He's perfect in every single attribute. So when you're thinking about purity, you're also thinking about holiness. Anybody here ever been around somebody who was physically nasty? I mean, one of the things, I know sometimes I run into people, I think Chief Adams back here was talking to me about, he knew that I was on a submarine. He was on a submarine once. What did those sailors on the old diesel boats look like and smell like? Well, they didn't get to take showers as often as we did on a submarine when I was on there. Had my own bunk. We only got about 8 gallons of water, but we took a shower every day. But it still had its unique smell. But, if you've ever been around somebody who hadn't taken a bath in months, I mean, what's that like? I mean, it's horrible. You wouldn't think of being like that on the outside, but on the inside is even of a greater nature. Job reflects that attitude. After the rounds of persecution, he said, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name. But the fact that he can say that, did he value his faith more than the physical blessings? He certainly did. At the end, God rewarded him twofold over what he had before. And so it makes sense. So the attitude, the attribute of holiness, all the others come out of it because God is completely holy. He's perfect. He's pure in everything. So when you look at holiness, kind of has two aspects, with a purity aspect, and also it's not double-minded. There's a passage in James, be not double-minded like a wave of the sea. You ever known someone who couldn't make up their mind in something? Anybody ever worked for a boss that one day, let's do it this way? The next day, something else, let's try it this way, has no idea what he's doing? I mean, how do you keep somebody like that happy? You don't. In the church, there are people, if you've been a leader in the church, will you ever find Christians who are double-minded? One day they seem to be on top, the next day, the next week they're drifting. I mean, how can you trust someone like that? If you were an employee of a company and had 20 employees, and all of them you couldn't really trust, let's say you were a manager of a McDonald's, morning shift, got to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you weren't sure, you knew you had to have at least 12 employees come in to run that shift. You got 15, what are you hoping? Well, you see them come in, that's one, that's two, we've only got 5. Now what happens? I mean, how long would you be a manager of that franchise? You'd leave. No one likes someone who can't make up their mind. Well, when you look at God who is holy, he's perfect in everything, and holiness refers to something that's set apart. It's not the common. It's not the same. It's special. It's unique. And so to be pure, and I mentioned last week, an ingredient of a particular product that Procter & Gamble sold in the 1800s, 99.44% pure. Anybody remember that? Ivory soap. I don't know if they still market that, but that was a slogan that worked. The other 56%, they detected some impurity, so they said, let's go with that. Let's market that. And that was a pretty impressive way to do. And so if you take something like water, it has strychnine in it. How much could kill you? Anybody remember living long ago enough where you could go up to a creek and sit and get down on your hands and knees in a lap of water out of a creek bed? Anybody willing to do that today? Ain't no way. When you think about people traveling, yes, Bill?
I was just going to say, you were talking about God being perfect. Think about that. It ain't that he doesn't lie. He can't.
Yeah.
That's hard for the human mind.
It's impossible for us. It's hard for us who are limited, finite, to understand something that is infinite in value. I've mentioned this before. You know how much it costs to house a prisoner? It costs a lot of money. What if the governor said, hey, we're going to save a lot of money. We're going to close down all the prisons. We're going to get members, or we're going to get the general population of Tennessee to take them into their homes. We're going to pay them. How much money would it take for you to house a guy who's in there for first-degree murder? You got kids at home. Why would you not be comfortable? Because your morality is way up here. And his is where? I mean, the 22 months I was there at Brushy Mountain serving, as not my time, but, as someone who was trying to teach, there were people that scared me. I mean, I could just look in their eyes and see evil. And I've told them several times, the first time there, I agreed to do it before I ever went down there. If I had to go down there, I'd say, hey, no way, Jim, I'm going to do that. I'm sorry. I can't. It scared me to death. Anybody here taking any tours of Brushy Mountain since it's been available? That's a scary, God-forsaken looking place. But, after a while you're out there, you realize that, because you develop a reputation quickly, whether or not you're there for sincere purposes or not. And if you're there for sincere, people will respect you. And I got to the point after a couple of months, I'll go in early and eat breakfast with them. I'd stay and eat lunch with them there in the cafeteria where they all were. People respect me. I paid for my part and all that. It was a way to be with those who were Christians. We baptized 40 a year in that prison ministry. It was great. But still yet, how many people would feel comfortable there? Because if you're around somebody that you know is beneath you, in a great way, morally, you don't feel comfortable around that. Well, think about that challenge it creates for God. He's perfect, and who are we? I mean, by the very fact that he would want to have fellowship with us is an amazing thing, but the love aspect, the merciful aspect is there. You can see that, in human beings. If someone's in prison, I mentioned before, when I would go to Morgan County, we'd walk through a big visitation center twice the size of this room. What family title or family relationship would be most dedicated to seeing those sorry men? You think the wives all stayed around? Anybody guess who it was? What relationship? Mamas. Why would mamas come and sit and hold the hands and just look in the eyes of first-degree murderers? Why would they do that? Because, see, that's their son. It's a product of their womb. That's their flesh and blood. So if you can understand that, maybe you can understand how God looks at all of us with pity if we're not doing well. So to want to be pure in heart reflects what God wants us to be. Look at number 2. The holiness of God refers to his unparalleled majesty in that he is blameless, faultless, and morally pure. Holiness also refers to someone or something that's separate. It's someone or something that has been set apart from the common because it has the highest value in nature. Because the Lord God is holy, pure, he wants us to be holy. So get your Bibles out. Look at 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 1. We've got several passages here. We're not going to be able to get to them all. What I hope you'll do when you get home sometime this week is look at the other passages and study this lesson for your own sake. Hebrews 1, excuse me, 1 Peter 1, verse 13. 1 Peter 1, verse 13. Therefore, gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, rest your hope fully upon the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, not conforming yourself to the former lusts, as in your ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Because it is written, be holy, for I am holy. So that's one of the greatest attributes of God, the greatest. And so as Christians, if we're to be like our Father, then our desire will be holy. How will that help us? From a practical, so you take someone that really is striving to be as pure as their life can be. What impact does it have on life and how it's lived and the level of suffering and hard times that come? Take someone who makes pure, righteous, holy decisions time and time again. How's his life different? Take someone going through high school, college. If you have no morals, can you take something in your body or drink something in your soul or listen to wrong people and do something, engage in sin and pay a price for that? And, we see it especially in the problem like of drugs, or even growing up, to see somebody, if you're 16 or 17, that's drunk and may laugh at it. And maybe some of you are like me. When I see somebody drunk today, I don't look at it the same way. It's a sadness for me. Why? If you or a family member that you love has paid the price, has been hurt in some way, form, or fashion by a drunk, how would you feel? I've told the story again and again. My father was almost killed by a drunk. It took the drunk's head off. It killed him. He's just 26 years old, out on Highway 11E, going on just a few miles outside of Jefferson City, racing, drunk, out of his mind. Came across me and hit my dad head on. His wife was pregnant with their first child. How was that child affected? How was his wife affected? How was my dad affected? Broke both of his bones, his legs, crushed them. His left arm broke off the steering wheel. It hit so hard. His face hit the dash. Remember when they had metal dashes? I mean, had to have plastic surgery because of massive concussion. He was never the same man. He limped for the rest of his life. One of his ankles was twice normal size. I don't know how he made it to 62. Every day of his life, there was pain. And we saw that. So what was the lesson as children? We observed. Does alcohol pay? It's not the price that people want. Some people see it as fun. Anybody ever come across a wreck, an accident where a drunk caused harm, death? You can't get that out of your mind. I saw that once. Coming home from a date, when I still lived in town, there was a guy come across the meeting, hit a young family. They couldn't find the baby. They found it in the dark. Card rolled over it, dead, squished. And the drunk was over there. Somebody pay attention to me. I wanted to. I wanted to. I don't know how those policemen stopped from it, but he lived. What about the devastation caused that family for the rest of their life? So sin has a consequence. The wages of sin ultimately is death. And so being pure, if you take a young girl who makes decisions about purity, who will she probably marry? If she's pure of heart and wants purity, what's the advantage of marrying some guy who has a pure heart? How many marriages you think are broken because of adultery? But if you are married to someone and you know there is no way that spouse would ever cheat on you or you would cheat on that spouse, what are the blessings of that marriage? I mean, you're already blessed with every day is a good day just having a spouse at home who loves you and wants to be with you for the rest of your life. So sin has its consequences. You make poor decisions, you pay a price for that. You make righteous decisions, and you're spared of all the heartaches of life. So that's just one thing, something that you're spared from. But as a Christian, living your life for a righteous cause means something. Anybody old enough to remember the Crossroads movement? That was something started in 1967 in Gainesville, Florida, the Crossroads congregation. A guy by the name of Chuck Lucas got that movement started within a few years. There were 2,000 people there. And after a while, it became a mecca for people who were in the total commitment movement. They trained dozens of ministers that went throughout the brotherhood. And one came to the Clifton congregation in Cincinnati. They were baptizing young people right and left. And then he began to make more demands and more demands and more demands. One elder left because he tried to point it out. They disfellowshipped him because they thought he was a troublemaker. And then they found out what happened. That young man took 90 members away from that congregation and formed the Gateway Church of Christ. Within 4 years, they had 800 people. One thing they did that was appealing, almost all the people in that church were young adults. They were doing a lot of benevolence. They were getting together for a lot of fellowship and getting high on Jesus instead of drugs. They didn't know they were in a cult. The bad part about that movement, when you became in that movement, you were assigned a prayer partner. And ultimately, they made every decision, every major decision, who you could date, your major, whether you could go home for a Thanksgiving holiday or not, who you could marry. They controlled your life and your money. I saw one girl who had already attempted suicide. Her roommate found her in time. She was like a zombie. I couldn't help her. It's sad. A lot of people eventually left that movement. Kit McKean became the guy. But, you know, very, very great guy, very appealing. Is Boston, Massachusetts in the 70s, 80s? You think that's a wonderful haven of spirituality? He got a church in Boston with 4,000 people. But were they teaching the truth about Jesus? No. But one part that appealed to them, they were doing a lot of good works. They were doing benevolence things. There was a family that left them to go over there because they come and painted their house, these kids, on a Saturday. Well, that's great. But is it for the right cause? Found out it was not. And so good things can be done, but the motive behind it has to be pure as well. So when you think about what obedience is, it's not only doing the right thing in the right way, it's doing it for the right reason. That's what they were not doing. Eventually that movement fell. Questions on that? If the Lord wants us to be pure and we're not, and he's pure and holy and wants us to be, and we're now in his kingdom as his children, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? Well, think about what parents do. You've got parents, you're a parent, you got kids that are growing up. Will you have any morals for them? Will you turn them loose and let them do anything they want, go wherever they want, have, eat, taste, drink, anything that they want? Will you have rules? And if they break those rules, what will you do? What gives you the right to decide for them whether they go to church or not? I know a lot of parents say, I'm just going to let them decide. Anybody here have parents that had a drug problem? They drug you to church whether you wanted to or not. But for their good, for their good. When my dad finally got back in church, all my brothers and sisters didn't want to go. You know what? We're going to go. That's the way it was. And we were the first ones there. Not just going to go, but he had his back seat already reserved. He was going to get his seat. We went all the time. He made up his mind. Didn't matter. Those decisions are made for you. Why? Why will parents enforce a strict rule that's far more conservative than their 16-year-old son or daughter wants? Because he knows what's best. And so as a parent will do things and discipline his child, what will God do? So look at 1 Peter chapter 1. Earlier, before the statement was made about be holy, he talks about the trials that come. Look at verse 6. Eventually, we'll have full salvation in heaven. That's the inheritance that we get. It's reserved for us. In this, the fullness of salvation, verse 6, you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you've been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it's tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen, yet you love, though you don't see him, yet believing, you rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. So God looks at you, at your character. What do you need? What's something, an attribute that everybody needs? If you look at James chapter 1, it's one of the greatest virtues mentioned there, James 1, 2 through 4, those of you that know. Count it all joy, my brethren, you have all these various trials, knowing that the trial of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that you might be complete and entire. Anybody here ever have a problem with patience? Everybody does. And so therefore, do you think it would behoove the Lord to ever give you time tests to help to develop that patience? Did he give Abraham and Sarah a time test? What was it? You're going to be the father. 9 months later, Isaac popped out, right? How long did he have to wait? 25 years. 25 years. You think along the way that maybe we better help out? Yeah, that's what they did. We need to come up with another plan. We're going to help God out. What was their plan? What was their name? What was the son called? Hagar and Ishmael is the father of the air brace, and it's still causing problems of division and strife for how many years? 3,000, 4,000 years, but all because someone was not patient. Patience, my dad assured me, was one of my least virtues. And I think the Lord knew that I was going to need patience. You know what the Lord, some of you may be able to figure this out, what the Lord did to help me to learn some lessons of patience? I call it the U.S. Navy. Because my dad said, son, you got rabble. Anytime you don't want to do something, you quit. You know how long a submarine patrol is? You have no choice. You get on that boat, you got it for 100 days. 100 days. There's no nights off. There's no time off, no vacations, no holidays, and so forth. You're living based on an 18-hour day. You're working on an average of 14 hours and sleeping 4 every 18 for 72 days, all submerged time, and you can't do a thing about it. You can't say, I'm going to take a sick day, a mental health day. Good luck. You have to do that. And so for 5 years, what did I learn? Do what you told. You signed up for this, and by George, you are going to finish it. Anybody here have any time tests you want to share? Things you had to deal with that took a lot longer than what you expected it to take? Well, I think about your wife. How long she had those headaches? I mean, pretty much most of her adult life. I mean, is this ever going to go away? You think she's ever asked that question? Hundreds of times, but it's still there. Why? My dad called it paying your dues. Now, everybody's going to pay their dues. Anybody familiar with that term? There's going to be a time in your life, if you're going to be worth anything, where you're going to have to do something that you feel is going to be beneath you. You're going to have to do it a whole lot longer than what you'd ever expect, maybe for years. That's the way life is. And so some of these things that we develop, it's not going to be easy. Developing character as opposed to comfort. How does God develop character? Making the right decision, doing the right things for the right reason, whether somebody's watching you or not. Well, you keep doing wrong long enough, what do you learn? I talked at the time again about the guy who was there's only about 4 of us on the boulevard who didn't drink. One guy was a handsome guy. He could have his pick of the ones he wanted. He was someone who drank heavily. He was married to a woman in Charleston, is on the fast attack, pulls into Norfolk, goes in Liberty, closes out a bar, finds a girl he wants to spend the night with. She is the most beautiful thing she was and what she'd ever seen. He went up and made his play, went home to her. He don't remember too much about it, but he remember waking up the next morning. And that beautiful creature turned into a 320-pound sweat hog, he said. And she had his billfold, had his license, knew where he was, chased him down to Charleston, knocked on the door one day. Is such and such here? No, who are you? I'm looking around. I'm his wife. How do you think that went? You know what he made the decision to do from that point on in his life? Never drink. He said, anything that would make that woman look that good, I don't need in my body. You think in that area of life, his character improved? Sure it is. Yes, Cordell.
There's a song that says that women look prettier at closing.
Yeah. I mean, that's life. And see, that's the way, sin looks so beautiful, but it's like there in Proverbs about stings like an adder. I mean, you pay the price for that. After a while, you learn, don't do that anymore. Don't do that. Don't do that. And even just sometimes something like cussing. Sometimes Christians cuss. You know who can sometimes reveal that you're a cusser and use bad language? Your kids. Your kids can say that because they picked it up from you. I heard the story of a little girl. She had this beautiful dress on, and she wore it today, and one preacher said, that's a beautiful dress. My mama says it is, but it sure is to iron. They got caught. They learned. You think she'd be much more careful about what she said from then on? Yes. And so we go through these trials. There are 2 things about trials that are mentioned here in verse 6 that are important to know. See if you can figure them out. 2 things about trials intended to purify us. That's important, about the nature of trials. Verse 6, 1 Peter chapter 1. 2 things about the nature of trials mentioned in verse 6. Trials that are necessary to purify our faith. You can find 2 things. What's the phrase? Go ahead, Donnie. Yeah, they're different kinds. Why? Yeah, if need be. What does that mean? First of all, if need be. You don't get tested unless you need to be tested. If you're keeping pure on the straight and narrow, you don't have to worry about that. And so the various trials will come based on what you need. And how long do they last? It may not seem like a little while, but they last compared to your whole life for a little while compared to eternity. If you had to go through, here's the question. If the Lord offered you a choice today, I'll put you in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, would guarantee heaven. Anybody here go to the wheelchair? What's that? Let's roll. Let's roll. Let's roll. I talked to a lady one time who grieved over she'd been in a wheelchair most of her life. And she said, I don't know why, but she had a grandson who adored her. She was his hero. And he would listen. When no one, his mom and dad couldn't tell him anything, no one else, but when she said, honey, would you do this? He would do it because of her faith and love for her. I said, let me ask you this. If you knew that by you being in that wheelchair and the example you set for that grandson was the difference between making heaven or hell, would you stay in that wheelchair? What'd she say? Gladly. See, we don't know the answer to those things. There are things we have to go through that God sees and lets us have only because of a greater good down the road. The lot of the passages I could show you there, let me show you one that has to do with our love, how capable we are of loving. 1 Timothy chapter 1, all the commandments that we have, what are they intended to do? The Bible that we have, the Scriptures. 1 Timothy 1, yes. Yeah, let's go ahead and look at verse 22 because it has an important point. 1 Peter 1, verse 22. Let's go back and then we'll look at 1 Timothy 1. 1 Peter 1, verse 22. Go ahead and read it for us, Donnie. See, that's the key. And that really ties into what we're going to look at. So our souls are purified by what? By the truth. Since you have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit in sincere love of the brethren, love one another first. So if your heart has been made pure, what do you do with that pure heart? In your attitude towards each other. You love each other. And then look at that verse. In fact, if you're not opposed to writing in the margin of your Bible, in both those places, you can put alongside 1 Timothy 1, verse 22, 1 Timothy 1, verse 5. Alongside 1 Timothy 1, verse 5, you can put 1 Peter 1, verse 22. But let's look at 1 Timothy 1, verse 5. What does pure heart, pure love come from? The purest kind of love, not stained, completely pure. The purpose of the commandment is love, comes from three things. What are they? Love from a pure heart, from a, what's the second one? Good conscience, and third from what? A sincere faith. Well, why do you think that's the case? Why can real love only come from a pure heart? From a pure heart. Again, no one understands what pure is. Why can love only come from? Here's a guy who said, honey, I love you. 95% of the stuff that he does for is great. But he's got that part of his nature. He's a little flirty, likes messing around, and twice in 5 years he sneaked around on his wife and she didn't find out about it. Does he really love her? Twice in 5 years she finds out about it. What's it done to her marriage? What's it done? Does it affect it at all? Sure it does. Because if somebody loves you, I mean, think about this. Sometimes it's helpful to look at our own value system and then to see why God is the way he is. If you were about to marry somebody, you're young, let's go back in time, you think this person has got everything. And this person has understood your nature, but it comes time now, you're the guy, you're proposing to the woman. She says, honey, I love you, I want to be married, but there's one thing I'm going to tell you that you do or want. I ain't ever going to do that. I don't care how long we live, I am not going to do that. I want to hold back on that. You get all my love, but this one thing you're not going to get from me. What do you think he would say? What should he say? You're gone. One thing. But what does that one thing, one statement make about that person? My love is not pure. It still comes down to what I want in some things. I'm going to hold it back. And so how does God look at us? Is he the same way? God's love tolerates no rivals because he knows what's the best and wants to provide what's the best. So we can understand why love comes from a pure heart. What's a good conscience got to do with it? How can someone not love completely, purely, and not have a good conscience? Well, first of all, what does it take to not have a good conscience? You're doing something that you know you shouldn't be doing. What do you think happens from that? Here's one thing. Well, I'm going to sneak around on this one thing I'm going to do. Nobody will probably find out about me. What happens to that mindset? You think? Those of you that have seen it. Does it ever stop right there? What's the old adage about a camel getting its head under the tent? What happens after a while? It inches forward, gets a little bit more, and after a while, where's the camel? If you say, I know, I'm doing everything right, but this one thing I'm not going to do. How good do you feel about yourself? Will that affect your motivation for things? How far will you go in things that are right when you know there's a part of you that's embracing and dealing with sin? And a sincere faith, what's that important? If you know what God wants and you're not living the faithful life, you're not trying that, where do you think you stand? It all goes back to the problem. If you're holding back from what God wants, needs, deserves, and what's best for you, how far can He fix you? How far can He go with your life? Your clay that has been marred, but like you got clay, you got to build something, but there's a rock in it that you can't get out. And you can't make what you want because this rock, take this, people can do amazing thing in sculpture. You take someone that's a tremendous sculptor, got this beautiful face, but got a rock sticking out there like a big old pimple. What do you see? What's that sculpture now worth? It's not of value anymore. What do those that are pure in heart, what would they get to see? On the faith, they shall see what? They shall see God. You get to see God here and who He is and want to be like in 1 John chapter 3, verse 3. But ultimately, one day, you'll be in the throne room of God, like we saw the other day from Isaiah chapter 6. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God. One day, you'll be a part of that great refrain throughout eternity. Thank you so much for your good attention. Keep these notes. There are other passages we didn't look at. Hopefully, you can on your own. Hopefully, this has been helpful to you. If you're missing any one of the handouts from before other classes, they're right here on the front row. Thank you.